Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Traffic at Trade Group, and today is Tuesday, May 25th. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. This video is for education purposes only. Also, if the screen is a little bit blurry to you, it's because YouTube has not finished rendering the high def version of the video, and that takes a little bit of time, so just be patient. You can close the video and perhaps reopen a little bit later, and it should be fixed. Let's talk about the overall averages first. Today was just kind of a slow grind lower, mainly for the S&P. It looked like there was a little bit of sell programs washing through for the day. We could look at the price action, but S&P finished down, SPY finished down just fractionally for the day, down 20 basis points. But reminder that we did start higher. The market kind of was up in the after hours going into the open, and like I said, grinded lower from the start to the end of the day. The Qs finished up a little bit better. They did actually finish up positive, but they were kind of the same story. Same thing with the small caps, but to a larger extent. They finished down 90 basis points, down 1.3% over the session. That's from the open. Again, they started up higher, so just some selling pressure coming in. And then what was kind of interesting for the day too was bonds and gold. We're up, exactly the same amount for the day. So really odd, and they were doing that all day long. You could see that they both finished up, within a couple of basis points difference. But if you kind of watch the price action for the day, it did, to me, it looked like there was some type of model that was going on saying buy bonds, buy gold, buy bonds, buy gold. And some algorithm may be executing that model-driven order. Just a guess. Also, one of the things that I'll throw at you before we go over the price action in the indices is that we're now into this end of the month week, which just typically is not a great place to kind of try to put on a lot of risk until we maybe get to the end of the week. So we'll see how that kind of shapes up. Maybe some of that is being front run a little bit. But, considering it's only Tuesday of the week, but, it's something that we've discussed in these videos before. As we get to the end of the month, I could tell you from judging from my performance, but I've had, a couple of these weeks in 2021 where I've just given back a lot of profits from earlier in the month. It just hasn't been constructive for me at all. It seems like every trade could start that seems like it's a decent setup, just doesn't have any legs to it, just doesn't have any momentum to it, and I end up always forcing trades at the end of the month. So what did I do? So I'll talk about what I did today to try to avoid a little bit of that, and I'll try to continue to do that through the rest of the week. So let's first, before we revisit that, let's talk about the S&P. So not a big deal, it's just it's a little bit disappointing, I think, mentally when you see this kind of price action, from yesterday, really, where there was decent buying going on, it looked like, on low volume, albeit. But a grind up in the after hours, and it looked like we might have some continuation for the day, and then we kind of got that second opinion once the market opened, and you can kind of just see every time that we fought back a little bit, there was like another just bigger red bars than green bars. You would see like 2 or 3 little green bars and then a big red bar. So that just tells me that there is some sell programs going on, right? And if we look at this over the day, same thing, a couple big green bars, the VIX, then a couple small red ones, and then settling in, and then every now and then you'd be, boom, big green bar. So again, to me, that just looks like some selling programs were washing through the tape, and maybe some rotational type stuff too. VIX did end up 2.4% for the day, but we just got back to 1980. So all in all, like, if you wanted to put some things on yesterday, like if your view is more than just a couple days out, then I think this could maybe set up nicely for next week, right? So let's zoom out here for a minute. And we'll talk about some of the things that I brought up in the trading room yesterday. But we're sitting here right at the top of value, right? So I kind of what I'm leaning towards for next week is that maybe we see a push to new highs, right? We have that new money being put to work. Hopefully, not every first of the month, but generally we see new money be put to work. It's really weird. The institutions like to pull some money out at the end of the month and then put it right back in the beginning of the month. Also do some shifting around that end of month. We also know that there's this momentum ETF rebalance. So kind of weird. Like I got some questions about that, right? If you look at that momentum ETF, and probably what that rebalance is going to be, and Bloomberg has an article out on it. They're going to be shifting around some money out of growth areas. Particularly probably some of the software names, probably some of tech, and going into some things like financials. Well, if you looked at it today, that didn't take place today. So it's really tough to kind of pre-position for that stuff. Unless you know the exact individual names that are going to be seeing the flows, and if you calculate the flows too, because you could look at one thing like the momentum ETF, but there may be a larger trade going on, which could be some profit taking going on in some value names. These things are definitely possible. All right. So the other level to let me just turn on these labels so you can get a level to watch. But also one of the things to note, right? So 4192, right? Now we're just 5 handles under that, and we closed up about 5 handles north of it, the value area for the month. But also note that next month, now again, this is still developing, right? And this is based on the market profile. I can turn that on too, so that you could see exactly what I'm referring to. So when we show the market profile, right, which is how we're extracting the value area, notice that this value area that we're still developing for the month is going to carry over to next month. And we're calculating this now. And you could see how closely it resembles the new June value area will be very close to the May value area. So why is that? Well, because we really haven't gone anywhere. So the volume has been contained in a range, with the majority of the volume happening very close to the point of control from the last month. So a little bit different distribution when you look at the shadow area here versus this month. This month is almost like a perfect bell. Well, I don't want to say bell curve, but it's pretty normally distributed, right? Versus this month, there's a little bit of a skew to it, right, to the size of it. So bottom line is that we're really not going to have much of a difference in these levels. And I am being a little bit optimistic when I think that we can kind of break out to new highs. We're starting to see, more things participate a little bit. Some of the things that we've gone over before are, the advanced decline line, how that remains very strong for the NYSE stocks, right, which have a bigger universe. So I just think things are kind of aligning a little bit. Let me make sure I've got the right one up here. Yeah, so this is the one for NYSE stocks. So far, just sticking with the trend, we're seeing that breadth is continuing to expand, right? We're not seeing any major divergences here. Notice this is very close to also giving us new highs. So just because this is going up doesn't guarantee that that the S&P breaks out to new highs, but it's not conflicting with that theory either. And I would rather stick with the path of least resistance. And if we're right at the top of value, I think it's, like I said, and above the moving averages, I think the trend is just telling us that it is what it is and it's higher. Remember, the trend and trend following is not predictive. It's just telling you how things are. And I would rather stick with that until it's telling me something other than that. Also, if you look at the sentiment, right, we're not seeing like a sizzling hot, sentiment right now. I think the fear and greed index is well below 50. I think somebody said it was 33 or something like that. So we're not seeing sentiment really high either. So that's also kind of pointing to pushing me to draw the conclusion that I think we're closer to new highs than a breakdown or something like that. Chop could also be something that we get, but that's my view. Qs are a different story. Qs actually led today, but we're going to be coming upon some great that we got over the 50-day moving average, but we still have a lot of overhead issues going on here. But a couple of strong days could get us right through there too. So the one thing that I think is a little bit still concerning with the Qs is when we look at the advanced decline line. And again, these are things that we've gone over before, but this really, even though we had a pretty strong day yesterday, right, this didn't change the picture too much, right? This is still kind of confirming that there's some issues with the advanced decline line for NASDAQ. So again, that makes me feel a little bit more conservative about this. And then, of course, if we look at IWM, still very sideways to me, but just doesn't want to lead right now, right? So very sideways looking. It's been in value, it's been below value, it's been back in value, outside of value, and inside and then outside. So we'll see how this lines up. Again, the value area for next month, if we don't go down too much further, we'll still be inside value, which tells me sideways. All right. Let's look at both Qs. Notice again, this value area is going to be a little bit lower. And if we could open up above value, right? So if we can get through the end of the month and start above 332, call it 333, I think that would be constructive. All right, let's look at those bonds for a minute. All right, so, kind of interesting. And we can kind of look at TLT first. And let me zoom out. So yeah, like I said, TLT, again, they're going to be different chart patterns, but just kind of interesting that TLT was up about the same amount as gold. So notice that we're getting close to the top of value resistance, right, for the month, 139.69. Interesting, you've got kind of the same thing going on here. Actually, like a little bit wider value area for the month of June than for the month of May. But similar shape, not too far, not too extreme from there. All right, and bonds, the long bond futures actually did get over, right? So you talk about things that people are not expecting, right? Bonds to rally here a little bit. That's what they've done over the last week. We've got 4 green bars in a row. I think overall that kind of just takes the pressure off of some of those growth stocks, and could be one of the contributing factors why they are outperforming as such. But interesting. And again, I think some of this is why some of these things are going up like this. I'm not reading into it too much. I do follow the trend, of course. I think what's going on here in gold is interesting. We're now decently above the 200-day moving average. But what's interesting, and decent volume, by the way, on this bar, right? What's interesting is the gold miners are not moving with them. They were up 20 basis points. Now, this is an interesting little pattern that you got going on. You got a little bit of a bull flag going on. So if you want a level to watch for a break higher in GDX, that would be 39.75. I almost thought about putting on a little bit of a preemptive trade, but I mentioned I really don't want to put on too much going into month end, right? Because it's whippy. That's kind of what my major conclusion is, that the price action is pretty whippy. So that's GDX, but like also if you look at Newmont, which was one of the best performers, finished down 1.2%. So again, just odd to me, right? And maybe this is putting a little bit more consolidation. But I just normally, when you see gold up close to 1%, you usually see the gold miners up like 2 or 3%, not down, which is Newmont is doing. So maybe this Newmont is, just taking its time putting in consolidation here. But this would be a nice little look. If this thing comes out of consolidation, to the upside, I have no problem, going along some Newmont here. Gold is another name too. This is a name that I put into the TTG Trend Portfolio about a week ago, and it's just doing a nice little consolidation. So this is Barrick Gold, right? So just interesting. I know a lot of people have been looking at these silver miners. So silver was also up about the same thing, still kind of sideways. This did not, I was really interested in silver last week to see if it would close above the value area, first green bar. It did not. It did not close above there. Maybe this week it will. But notice it got much higher, and then it kind of gave it all back at the end of the week last week. So I see a lot of people talking about SIL and SILJ, right? Still consolidating, right? So I'm long this in my trading account, and I've been holding it, not doing much with it, right? So let's see if this is the junior miners silver ETF. So again, I have alerts set, and I'll watch to see if these things, and I'll get a little bit more aggressive, but I'll wait for the breakout of value first. All right, that would be 1752. All right, so a couple different things to kind of go over in today's video. I don't go over gold and silver in every video, but today wasn't all that exciting. It's funny when we get kind of this type of price action. Every once in a while, we see these high short interest names really get going. That was kind of the other story of the day. GameStop went up to this 1 hour VPOC, right? We talked about this level earlier, that this is where GameStop could get to. It actually went a little bit further. AMC, that also went nuts today, up 20% for the day. I guess a lot of speculators in these names. I don't really get it, to be honest, and if I don't have conviction in things, then I don't play them, because if I get myself into a trade and if I don't have conviction in it, then as soon as I see a red bar, I'm kind of out of it. I've got weak hands. If I don't, if I have low conviction, I got the weak hands, right? And I just I don't really understand it, to be honest. I don't understand why these things have this high short interest still. Who still has conviction in these things? Like who in their right mind would stick in a short with these things? Because we know that there's a certain crowd that is so passionate about these names that they would rather lose their shirt than sell these names. So I don't know how anybody trades against something like that or stays short against that, but it says it still has a 19% short interest. GameStop still says it has a high short interest too. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. Given that so many people are betting against the shorts and are so passionate against the shorts, why anybody would stay short, I have no idea. But that's the world we live in, and you have a choice, right? You could either try to play, these are high volatile names, and you could try to play these things. We did have a clear breakout of value. We talked about this chart a little bit earlier yesterday, and it gave a little bit of a shake, a little bit of a bake here, consolidated right back into the top of value, and then went pretty nicely here in AMC. So maybe 1738 is the next stop in this thing. But, the options, and I get everybody's looking for the gamma squeeze, but, you miss in these things, and you have really no recourse, right? Because the implied volatility is so jacked in these things. The weeklies are about a 43 implied volatility, and the GameStop is about a 30, so not as high as I thought, but still, if you want to buy the GameStop 210 calls, they're going to cost you $13, right? To me, that's not a you need something really big to happen. And, you got something really big to happen today, I guess, in GameStop. So I guess those buyers were somewhat rewarded. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. I was looking at the implied volatility change. I'm sorry. The implied volatility is 177 in GameStop. That looks about right. Sorry, I was a bit under the weather this weekend, so I'm still not 100% yet. Um, and AMC implied volatility, that's more like it, is a 235%, right? So, these options, like I said, they're super jacked. You have to really, if you're trading these things, in my opinion, you have to keep two eyes on them. If you are looking to trade them rather than just hold them forever. Um, all right, so those were the stories of the day. I wish I could tell you something else, but the high short interest names. The other one is KOSS, right? This one also moved up nicely today, up 22%. And it seemed like anything high short interest, right? Anything high, it seems like this happens, right? And I don't know if it's also a divergence away from cryptos, right? Cryptos haven't been doing as well, so maybe some of that speculative energy goes into the high short interest. We've seen that now a couple times, by the way, right? So that's somewhat predictable, right? When the cryptos go down, the speculative money flows into things like this. Right? I think this was this day too, 517, where the cryptos were down decently. So go figure. Out of the cryptos and into high short interest speculative names. All right, a couple other things, a couple other observations to point out. I think we talked about all these. Also, if you look at value, right? So maybe a little bit of rotation out to value. You could see that the oil and gas names really got hit hard today, as well as the steel names. They've been coming in pretty hard, and I've got one trade on in U.S. Steel. I almost got stopped out in it, but I've pretty much gotten out of a lot of this group of stocks that I was in, and I keep watching, right? So just like I was talking about with growth names, right? Waiting for them to bottom, right? You got to wait for the buyers to come back to names like Alcoa. I'm also watching this Reliance Steel is a good one, and a few others too. So I really wait for that confirmation, right? We talked about a couple names yesterday, just as follow through, but Square, I commented on Square pre-market, right? Everybody always seems to want to try to get the exact bottom of these things, right? Because they think that they're going to get the most reward, right? But a lot of times you get the most risk, right? What's different about Square, right? If you look at the last couple weeks, right? Here's this week's price action. Here's last week's. Here's the weeks before, right? Prior to this, going back weeks. Now we're going back 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. All right, here's where it made its peak. So it's been falling, right? And people have been trying to time the exact bottom of this thing. Notice what happened last week, right? It put in kind of an inverted head and shoulders pattern, right? A little bit more clean than this, right? We didn't really get a divergence, which means like an RSI divergence, right? So we didn't really get that. We didn't get the VPOC being taken out. But look how at least you're over this range, right? And now you can kind of set your stop, right? Which I think is just a better way to wait for that, for buyers to the first buyers to show up a little bit, so that you can kind of see that you have a little bit of a tradable bottom going on. Now, we don't know 100% if that's in, but doesn't it just look a little bit better than trying to time this perfectly? I don't know. To me, from a technical aspect, it looks so much better. But, just like in here, right? You had this going all the way down here, and you got a little bit of confirmation once this got out of this box, this range. So you got the same thing going on here. So it held up, I thought, pretty well today. It was up 2.5%, and I would watch 205. Now I know we moved a little bit away from this, so it's not as clean as it was yesterday, but at least you could use 208. Right? And it's so far, I think, pretty constructive. And now you can kind of shoot, now that the price is headed in the right direction rather than down, right? And you got some momentum behind it. Now you could try to get a target 220 and maybe 233 on the 1 hour chart, right? Notice also this 223 lines up with that level I just mentioned. All right, another name that held up pretty well was Roblox, right, which I'm still in, right? And I actually I bought a call spread. I took some of my profits from this trade and bought a call spread, but I thought this held up very well too. Kind of checked back all the way into $85, and buyers came into this thing, right? So it was weak early on, right off the bat this morning, and you had some buyers come in and find it. All right, so I mentioned I would talk about my trades, right? I always do. Boston Scientific was a name I got long yesterday. I got my first target. I don't know why I didn't buy this name pre-market. We talked about that in today's Q&A session. It actually hung in there pretty decently. This was a short-term trade for me. Notice it took out this VPOC and failed. But now if we can get back above that VPOC, what I would be looking for is like 144 in this thing if you're still in it. But again, notice the difference on the 1 hour chart. Right? It's not as clean as that square chart, but at least you're now back above all the short-term moving averages on the 1 hour chart. Right? And it didn't really actually lose that on that dip this morning. All right, so I took one quick target and I got out of that one. I also tried a little bit of the travel names too, but I'll tell you, these travel names continue to be difficult. CCL actually, it finished okay. I could have stayed in this trade. I set my stop right around this level, so it's fine to get out of it. But did not close above value, did not give a buy signal. And just difficult. I think the same thing with UAL. Still, if you happen to be in it going into today, you got rewarded. But still, just that's not a great looking candle. That's not very compelling to me. Kind of looks a little bit like that, right? So you want to see big green candles, especially on a break higher. So continues to be tricky. What I did do well in was this Lam Research, right? So I caught the second day of the semis. They also didn't finish strong either. Lam Research got right to my upside target, which was 652. So I took that off right where I saw resistance. ASML, which I also view as kind of best in breed in the semi space, closed up 2% and did make a new high today. All right, so there's just a couple things that I was looking at. Out of this one, I also got rid of my DuPont as we're seeing more commodity type names come in a little bit. I'm just trimming them. No reason to be kind of caught in more of a red bar than that, right, for the day. A couple of things I have my eye on for tomorrow. A couple boring names. United Healthcare, right, started to look pretty decently. Also, Sherman-Williams, kind of in almost the same pattern. Just, again, didn't have much momentum to it, so I don't want to force trades in this market. It's not worth it. And then one last one that we talked about too is Garmin, right? But again, just not telling me to jump into that name with a few days left of the month. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a great night. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you tomorrow.